definitely recommend having this one. Sometimes what I've done is I'll mix this one in with a standard Rider-Waite-Smith, just mix the two of them together, and I do a reading with just that one big deck. Hi everyone, it's Gwen from Hummingbird Tarot, and today I'm bringing you my top decks from 2020. Now I do have another video that is for the top 5 decks that were released or purchased in 2020, and this collection that I'm going over today are the decks that I used the most in 2020. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe, and don't forget to hit the bell so you're notified when I upload a new video. If you have any suggestions for any great decks that you'd like to share, I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. I am a deck collector, so I'm always on the lookout for good decks. What I'm focused on right now are decks that are positive and upbeat, that focus on the light, that are warm, sometimes a little silly. I'm open to silly decks too. So if you have any of those that you can recommend to me, I'd love to hear from you down in the comments. So the first deck I want to start with is the Shadowscapes Tarot. And this is a deck and book set. So it comes in a magnetic box. It comes with a really great book. Lots of information, detail about every page. It's not color images, but you do still get a good look at the graphics of each of the cards. And this is one of the most beautiful tarot decks that I have in my collection. My neighbors are being loud right now. Sorry if you can hear that in the background. So here's the back of what the tarot deck looks like. And then I have to come up awfully close for you to really appreciate how wonderful the art is. Now this is actually one deck that I wish was a lot larger, because you really just can't appreciate the amount of details that are included in this unless you sit and look. I've actually gone over this with a magnifying glass before to try to see these. There's lots of animals in here, but the energy is so ethereal, so mystical and magical. I just love the energy of this deck, and I do appreciate the artwork as well. Highly recommend this deck. Even to beginners, it's based on the Rider-Waite-Smith tarot system, and it has the traditional suits as well. So it doesn't, sometimes when you have decks that are based on Rider-Waite-Smith, they change up the suits a little bit, and that can be confusing to beginners, but that's a great deck for beginners. So the next deck I have, I don't have the deck box for this. I bought this as a used deck, and it's the Spirit Within Tarot, and I just keep it in this really pretty purple bag that goes with it. And I love this deck because it just shows silhouettes of people. The images are fairly basic, but I find them straightforward. The thing I like about it too is that you can't really tell what the people in the deck look like. They could be any race. This is based on your traditional Rider-Waite-Smith images as well, but the colors in this deck really remind me of a sunset, and I find it very soothing and very straightforward too. And I know some decks, if they don't have a lot of information in the card, it can be hard to read sometimes, but I like this deck. It's very straightforward, and I find it very easy to read because of that. The next deck I have in a bag that I made for it, and this too is a deck and book set. This is the Druidcraft Tarot, and the book, I can't say enough about the book that kind of comes with the Druidcraft Tarot book. I really appreciate this book. It's a huge reference source, great for beginners, but also I'm not a beginner and I enjoyed it too. And I have trimmed this deck This is what the back of the cards look like. I have colored the edges to match. And I do have a video showing that how I trimmed this down. I actually did a really bad job the first time around that I did it. And so I went back and cleaned it up. I'm a huge fan of the artwork here. And just because I have small hands, I have two versions of this deck. One is as it comes, and then this is my trimmed version. And I do find that I use the trimmed version more. And I do put clothes on the naked people in here. There is some full frontal male nudity in this deck, so heads up to that. And that's part of why I put clothes on the people, is I like to be able to use my cards online and not have to worry about nudity. Sorry, I'm covering up the image there. But it's a Celtic deck. I love this deck. Is one of my very favorites. And this was a 2020 favorite this year. Excalibur. So the next deck I have that was used quite a bit by me in the year 2020 is the Book of Shadows Tarot. And this is my soulmate deck. And I used this when I first got my hands on it quite a bit, and then it went up on the shelf and disappeared for a while. And then I got it back out this year. There are two decks in this set. It's the Book of Shadows, and this is the So Below. There is an As Above deck as well. Here's what the back of the deck looks like. And I'm kind of regretting choosing this color to the sides. It used to match here, but it's faded as it changed up a little bit. And this deck here has it's a modern deck. And I like all the little creatures in this deck. Next is an Oracle deck, and this one comes up often in my collection. This is the Sacred Traveler Oracle deck. And I love the energy of this deck. It's got purple, and then I've colored the edges to match. And I find this deck, it feels very good in your hands. It's got a matte, what I would consider a rose petal finish. This is what the images look like. And it says miracles, expect the wondrous to emerge. I just love the messages of this deck. There's a phoenix, transformation. Find this deck very supportive, very positive, upbeat, very comforting. Just what I needed this year. Next is the Universal Weight Pocket Edition, and this deck was actually out on my desk all year long. Well, not all year, since I got it this year. But I used this deck so much and I love it. These are the images that were colored by Mary Hanson Roberts, and it's colored pencil, but I love how crisp and clean all the images are here. And I'm going to go ahead and I'll flip through some of these. These are the traditional Pamela Coleman Smith version, at least the outlines are, and then Mary Hanson Roberts colored these in. And I have a bigger version of this deck too that's called the Universal Weight, and the box looks a little bit different. Let me grab that. And this is the Universal Weight, and they do have, I have seen a bigger, this is a full-size version, and this is the one that I have used in a lot of my RWS Versus videos. The coloring is a little more garish, the yellows, and if you see a full-size tarot deck with this sun on the front, that is the Universal Weight, I recommend using that deck and purchasing that deck instead of the one that looks like this, just because the yellows are just kind of obnoxious. The colors are kind of obnoxious in this one. They're a lot more soothing, and I love how much more crisp and clean the images look. It's the exact same colored versions. If you compare the cards color to color, you can see that, but you can definitely see a difference in the quality of the photograph. Here is higher quality, and the quality of the colors that they used when they were choosing the coloring, higher quality here. The next deck I have are the Shamanic Medicine Oracle cards, and here's what the back of this deck looks like. And these are Let me just take you through these. These have a very Native American feel to them. And I find that these pair nicely with a tarot deck, or if you want to just use them as a single card pull on their own, they work great too. They are kind of sticking together for some reason right now. They don't usually do that, but they are sticking right now. I think it's just the way that I'm holding them. A little awkward. They're not usually this awkward, but these are big. The Sacred Traveler Oracle deck is your standard Oracle size, and then the Shamanic Medicine ones, you can see those are a lot bigger. And if I look at the pocket version of the Universal Weight deck compared to the So Below Book of Shadows tarot deck, this is your standard tarot size, and this is much smaller here. Okay, then I have another deck and book set, the Everyday Witch Tarot by Deborah Blake. And I just love this deck. It really doesn't take itself too seriously. And I have colored the edges of the deck here to match. And these are cartoons. They're hand drawn here. And I'm sure many of you have seen this before. I actually use this deck year round. And it's one of my favorite all-time tarot decks that I have outside of my RWS versions. I just find that I love the artwork. I also find this deck to be very approachable for people who maybe are a little uneasy about tarot. The witch thing can sometimes throw people off, but since it's a little more lighthearted scenery, lighthearted scenes in each of these cards, it's a lot more approachable. And I've shared this before too. This is my very favorite tarot card of all time. And this is the Tower, and I love that if you look at the smirk on her face, you can tell that she's the one who took down the tower. I know she's got a little sparkle left in her wand at the tip there, and she knocked it down. And I love the control that shows, the self-control, because a lot of times the Tower card can be a bit of a shocking card, and I love that this card reminds us how much power we have when that card comes up. So I have another. This doesn't have a book to it, a box to it. It came in this pouch here. And this is the 7 Directions cards. Here's what the back looks like. They're feathers, and they remind me of seashells, but they're actually feathers. And they have such great messages. I actually love the messages so much of this deck that I have a card out for myself almost every day from this deck, year round. And it's all about reminding you to have perspective. And I really appreciate that, because sometimes I get really into my head and I just need to snap out of it, and this is a good reminder about that. And a good reminder that you have to have the bad things happen in life to appreciate the good. You have to have the lows to appreciate the highs. You have to have the dark to appreciate the light. And I don't always remember that, but this deck helps me keep that in perspective. What else do I have? The Tarot of the New Vision. And this deck is more for shadow work, and I do actually have an RWS version of this video where I compare the images in this deck against the traditional Rider-Waite-Smith images. And if you look at this card here, this is the exact opposite of the Fool. So you could say, if you're photographing this, the regular traditional image shows the Fool from the front, and then this would be if you're standing behind the image. And so this shows you what else is going on. And the thing that I like about this deck is that it's got things in there that you wouldn't expect to see. And if you see that what the Fool's looking at is, it looks like there's a volcano erupting in front of him. And a lot of the cards in this deck are like that. They have really surprising things in them. I'll just take you through some of these. There's a little monkey behind the Fool. Just feeling like I want to shuffle this deck a little bit first. So the thing I'd like to say about this deck, For me personally, I don't do a lot of shadow work. Some people may not agree with that and think that, you know, that's a good way to be in denial. But for me, I find that it's very easy for me to find the shadows in my life and to find the negative side of things, and I don't need help going there. I need help staying out of that place. Otherwise, I find that sometimes I can settle in and I stay there too long. But this year, I just felt like sometimes I needed to go there to get it off my chest and to shake it off and kind of shine the light on those dark corners. And this deck helped me do this. But you can see, you're looking at the back of the photograph, looking in the other direction. Sorry about this. So it's definitely a different perspective than what you're used to seeing in your traditional Rider-Waite-Smith deck. I definitely recommend having this one. Sometimes what I've done is I'll mix this one in with a standard Rider-Waite-Smith, just mix the two of them together, and I do a reading with just that one big deck. It makes for some really interesting readings. So thanks for joining me. I hope you enjoyed looking at the decks that I used the most in 2020. And I thank you for stopping by. I'll see you on the next time around.